We just received breaking news from the House floor, and to break that news for us is none other than Katie Fang. Welcome, Katie. Okay, tell us. This is exciting.
Yeah, so breaking news. So, as we know, Tim Burchett, who kind of always is living in a gray kind of space, he actually got a voice vote to approve his motion to subpoena Ghislaine Maxwell to appear for a deposition in front of the House Oversight Committee.
And this is against Mike Johnson because he was trying to close down the session early, right?
Yeah, so Mike Johnson said he was going to try to shut things down, but now he's saying, no, people are going to stay because we have some small things that we can get across that are non-controversial. But look, this dovetails with the other news, which is Todd Blanche is planning on meeting with Ghislaine Maxwell in prison over the next few weeks. I mean, suddenly, Ghislaine Maxwell, and you and I talked about this last week, Ghislaine Maxwell is suddenly ratcheting up the totem pole in terms of importance. But look at this insanity that we're seeing on the screen right now from Todd Blanche. This idea that the Department of Justice is some type of, let me come in white knight on the white horse kind of energy, that we're going to sit here and we're going to save America from what exactly? We're going to go interview Ghislaine Maxwell and she's going to tell us all, please. You and I know she ain't going to say anything unless she gets something like a pardon.
Absolutely. And we know that Trump's already talked about it before he was sworn in about giving her a pardon. My thoughts are twofold on this. Number one, if I'm Ghislaine Maxwell and I'm going to get a pardon, I'm going to say, oh my gosh, Trump, they weren't even good friends. I don't know anything about it. Minimize his involvement so that I can get my pardon and go live my life. And two, for Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche to talk about transparency and doing hard things, like, you all fucked this up. Like, I'm more surprised. I'm not surprised about the cover up. I'm surprised about the incompetence of the cover up. Because if I was unethical and amoral and worked for Trump, I would have gone completely differently. I would have produced all these documents. I would have left his name off. These people are profoundly incompetent. But what do you think about Ghislaine Maxwell in terms of her testimony?
I think it's hysterical that it's a Republican. I mean, Ro Khanna, to his credit, has been pushing for this as well. But I think it's hysterical that it's a Republican who's now pushing for this woman to give sworn testimony. I think the problem with Ghislaine Maxwell is, where's the litmus test for her truth, though? Right. Against what are you going to compare the truth of what she offers? When you do a pardon, you don't necessarily need to get something in return. I mean, it's a presidential power that can be exercised indiscriminately by him. But it's like, don't you think, though, people are going to sit there and say, wait. If she says X, Y, and Z, it's got to be tested against something. There's got to be something that's going to be the quality control that can be applied against what she has to say. But what's kind of crazy here too is Steve Scalise said this too today. He's like, look, he says, Republican leaders and others are now trying to, quote, expedite the administration's release of information over the August recess. He blames Democrats for covering up for Epstein for years, but now President Trump is in court trying to unseal the documents. And for whatever reason, the courts have sealed a lot of those records. This guy is dumb as a fucking box of rocks. It's grand jury records. These are victims of horrific crimes. And I mean, on my YouTube channel yesterday, I walked through the filings themselves. And the government represents in its own filings that Jeffrey Epstein was the most prolific pedophile in American history with more than 1,000 victims. So for Scalise to say, well, it must be the court's fault, it fits into this idea that it is a giant head fake by Donald Trump, where he's going to now blame the federal judges when they refuse to unseal grand jury transcripts, when you and I both know, though, that the grand jury transcripts are not going to have anything substantive. And there's a breadth and a universe of evidence that's out there that could be released to the American public. And you don't have to go to Ghislaine Maxwell, of all freaking people, to get the truth.
Well, and the records that are sealed, what we know about, he's on the flight logs, he's on the, voice, or like the messages left. And then Kylie, play this, what Maria Farmer said, because I love this, who was the first victim. She went to the FBI twice about Trump. And here's what she had to say, which I found this fascinating.
How close were they as far as you were able to tell?
Well, like Epstein said, he inherited him in the divorce. He said, basically, You're going to see us together all the time. We're fixtures because in the divorce, I inherited Trump and Ghislaine inherited Ivana. So he said, you're not going to see him at the house the way you see Ivana, and you're not going to see her at the offices the way you see Trump.
So do we have any expectation that Ghislaine Maxwell is not going to put her best interests first and say what Trump wants her to say so that she can get a pardon? I mean, like, there's zero credibility here. Like you said, how do you so she testifies, then do you have all these people come in and testify that she's lying? No, because what they're going to do is they're going to say, well, Bill Clinton was on the flight, which we all know, and that's going to be it. They're going to throw out some Democratic names, and then that's, I mean, MAGA's just going to chomp down. There's these victims are who I feel sorry for, really.
And I'm so glad that you showed Maria. We have to mention like Virginia Joffrey, like who's not with us anymore. I mean, tragically, took her own life because of all of this trauma. I mean, the victims are the people that we need to be focusing on. And that's the reason why this idea that there is some campaign for transparency here is so insulting to the American people.
Yes.
It's like, not only is it the victims that are getting re-traumatized right now, but to your point, if I'm a victim of Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and others that I want to emphasize, and Ghislaine Maxwell sits there and she just downplays Donald Trump's involvement and she decides to maybe emphasize some Democrats' involvement, are you now expecting victims to have to come forward and say, I'm sorry, that's not true, or I'm sorry that she's lying? I mean, are we now going to have an entire mini trial play out in public? Furthermore, it's like Ghislaine Maxwell has every freaking incentive to want to lie right now. She's currently pending the attempts to have her appeal heard by the United States Supreme Court. And here's the crazy-ish. The Department of Justice is already on record opposing the relief that she's seeking from the Supreme Court of the United States. But now the Deputy Attorney General, Todd Blanche, is going to go rolling into the federal prison where Ghislaine Maxwell is located to go speak to her. It is mind-boggling, the perversion of the judicial system that is occurring here. Perversion in every sense of the word. But I want to talk about too. Don't you notice it's Todd Blanche and not Pam Bondi who's doing this? Pam Bondi is not doing this. Why is Todd Blanche? Because Bondi is on the freaking outs on this one. Hands
really? Down. Well, he hasn't thrown her under the bus the way he's thrown other people in his orbit under the bus. But she also, as you correctly pointed out to me, which I had forgotten, that Pam Bondi was the Attorney General of Florida when that whole sweetheart deal with the immunity thing where he got nights in the prison or, the county jail or whatever. So Pam Bondi is in this up to her eyeballs.
Yeah, she's had her fingerprints all over this. There was another guy named Alex Acosta, who was the labor secretary, who was the interim U.S. attorney of the Southern District of Florida during that sweetheart deal that because remember, for Epstein, it was originally supposed to be a federal prosecution that ended up going state, and he got this sweetheart deal where he did like time on the weekends, where he would then be able to go to his office, some like high-rise office during the day, and he was accompanied by deputies. It was wild. But all of this got sanctioned by the government at that time. It was not only the state government, but the feds, right? And so everybody was involved in this. And I don't know if they thought that Epstein was just going to keep his mouth shut. But you and I both know a predator is a predator is a predator. That is a Donald Trump brand as well. Predators do nothing but be predators. And Epstein, even though he got that sweetheart deal, did not learn a lesson and turned out to go out and violate again, right? And so there's a reason why a lot of people just wanted it, A, swept under the rug, B, they wanted him silenced, and C, now you really think Ghislaine Maxwell, if she could go rogue and she could tell the truth and implicate everybody, you really think that Trump wants that to come out? I'm sorry, but using Blanche and others as a filter for what this woman has to say is a disaster. I will say this in full disclosure. Ghislaine Maxwell's lawyer is a good friend of mine. Her criminal defense lawyer, one of them is a good friend of mine. And I do not believe that he would allow his client to be put in a position where she's either going to be, doing something that's going to render her legally in some unsafe, untenable position, or physically in some unsafe, untenable position. I don't think that he would ever do that, but he's not her, right? And he cannot control her, just like Trump can't control her, nor can Blanche or Bondi.
What do you think the odds that her physical safety is currently under threat? I mean, I'm assuming they have extra guards on her, but when the Jeffrey Epstein, and here's the deal, extraordinary claims, conspiracy theories, I have to have all the evidence. But the metadata being wiped for almost 3 minutes under the Jeffrey Epstein tape in prison when he died, that gives me pause. And it gives me pause for her because shutting her up would be a great deal for the Trump administration. Now, I'm not accusing anybody because I certainly am not saying they did that, but I would think that she feels a physical safety threat right now.
I'm sure she has. And remember, Epstein died before she got indicted.
That's right.
He died before she got indicted. And so all of this kind of the chronology is important to kind of go back to the beginning and kind of see what's happening here. I will say that the memo, the DOJ memo, which I have here, what's insulting in that memo is it took cyber sleuths to figure out that there was that missing stuff. Because if you were to just take the DOJ at its word, which is insane that you and I are sitting here saying that you can't,
right?
It says here that the FBI enhanced the relevant footage by increasing its contrast, balancing the color, and improving its sharpness for greater clarity and viewability. That's fine. But then Bondi has the nerve to say, quote, the full, raw, and enhanced videos are available at the following links. She never discloses that they are spliced together. Mm-hmm. She never discloses the missing time. She never discloses the missing, data. And she just wants to snow people into thinking that the entirety of the video surveillance is there, putting aside whether it even has the relevant areas of the prison holding area. But still, it's like it took people to have to actually fact check her to show that she was misrepresenting to the American people. And that's the most kind of egregious betrayal of public trust, which is why in some weird way, we've talked about politics making strange bedfellows. Right. All of the people in MAGA land that are melting down understandably about this because of a claim of transparency and realizing that's just a crock of shit from this administration. You know what? More power to you. Go on. Keep on trying to dig at this because you know what? The more that people dig, the more the truth comes out.
Yeah, that's right. And what did they say? Secrets can't be kept in the dark or something. What do you think about Comey's daughter that was fired from the SDNY? First of all, I was surprised they still had Comey's daughter in the SDNY, but she is intimately familiar with the Ghislaine Maxwell case and the testimony and the evidence. So now they fired her. Is she someone that could be a stopgap, or would that be impossible? Like, is there an NDA, attorney-client privilege, something like that, if she were to come forward and say, that's the biggest bunch of horse shit?
Well, she's bound as well by the secrecy that's with the grand jury. And she also cannot disclose, the identities of victims, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, the reality is there's a lot of information that we never would have seen publicly if those cases had gone to trial for Epstein and Maxwell. Even then, her trials, like a lot of that's not out there because a lot of it wasn't relevant, right?
Right.
It's kind of like the same thing that happened with this P. Diddy trial. Like there was thousands or hundreds of hours of tape about which a lot of it wasn't seen. But Comey cannot just go out and just start running her mouth. I mean, she was a federal prosecutor. But isn't it amazing how, like, when there's smoke, there's fire? You're going to get rid of her now? Like, it's absurd to think that in the whole uproar and the furor of what's going on, like, you're going to boot her from her job now. You've known she's on the roster. He's been in office since January. She's been working there for years. She's been one of the best federal prosecutors at the Southern District of New York. But they're like, yeah, now we're just going to fire you summarily without any notice.
That's what they do. They hate competence because they are all so profoundly incompetent. Katie, thank you so much for lending your legal expertise and being on today. Please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and check out Katie Fang's YouTube channel. And I'm assuming you're on all the platforms.
I am. Thank you for that.
Thank you.